Georgia, Georgia, the whole way through. All right, I'm going to stick to my day job. Georgia on my mind. Man, Arizona, Pennsylvania hearings, bombshells of fraud after fraud. Arizona hearings, bombshell after bombshell of voter fraud. Michigan hearings, where your man Bobby Hesley is from, bombshell after bombshell of voter fraud. And then yesterday, Georgia, bombshell after bombshell after bombshell of voter fraud. Why is it that all the where's the proof people are still saying where's the proof? You know what's funny is they say that we're in denial. Oh, you Trump voters, you Trump supporters are in denial about whether or not Biden won. You guys just need to face the fact that Biden won and there's no evidence of voter fraud. But when in actuality, they are the ones in denial about so much voter fraud that's going to make your head spin, guys. And these are under sworn affidavits that carry criminal penalties of perjury of up to 5 years in prison. And there are also civil penalties as well. People can be fined lots of money if these sworn affidavits are not true. So to all my where's the proof Biden supporters, we got the proof. And I wish Attorney General William Barr would look at some of this proof too. How's everybody doing on this Friday afternoon? This is your man Bobby Hesley reporting to you for the December 4th, 2020 edition of the Bobby Hesley Show. If you have not done so, please subscribe to all of my social media channels. I make it very easy to do in the description section. Please like this video, love this video, laugh at it if I make you laugh. Give me an angry face if you don't agree with me. Like this video, comment on it, share it. It really helps me out with the algorithms. Now I want to get into this. Now, as you guys saw in the headline description of this video, Joe Biden commits yet another act of liberal Democrat hypocrisy by selling out his entire voter base, his entire constituency, all of his supporters, by committing an act of unspeakable animal cruelty. The fact of the matter is, guys, those that are on the left, those that typically vote Democrat, that support people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, one of the most sacred things to these people are animals. In fact, animals are more sacred to many of these people. Not all, I'm not generalizing, but to many of these people, animals are more sacred to these people than human life itself. And the fact is, Joe Biden broke his ankle, hairline fractured his foot, whatever you want to call it, on the claim that he was playing with his dog. Now, that's a first, guys. Do you know of anybody else who ever broke a foot playing with their dog? I mean, what was he doing? Was he playing touch football with his dog? Was he doing a race? Was he trying to race his dog? Was he doing a marathon? Was he having a footloose 1980s dance off with his dog? And he lost his footing and snapped his ankle like a chicken twig, like a chicken bone? How do you break your foot playing with your dog? And what the hell kind of dog is this that you have to be so active and so wild that you'd break your foot playing with him? Is it Cujo? Is it the dog from the movie Manimal? You guys remember the movie Manimal? And Manimal, M-A-N-I-M-A-L. It was like a horror movie about a dog. It was called Manimal. Was he playing with his Manimal and he broke his ankle? Monica Showalter wrote a very good piece about this, titled, Biden changes the story of his broken foot, now says he fell after the shower. Get this, guys, pulling his dog's tail. What is a Democrat doing pulling a dog's tail? That's a bit out of character from a Democrat, isn't it? I mean, if you're a Democrat, you're supposed to be aborting babies, whether they're in their first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, or in the case of New York, even after they're fully born. That's okay. In fact, that's promoted and encouraged. Kill as many babies in utero as you can, and even after they're born, kill them. Okay. You can give children surgeries and hormones so that they can mutilate themselves and change their gender. Oh, that's fine. That's not cruel. That's celebrated behavior. But if I ever catch you being mean to an animal, if I ever catch you pulling a dog's tail, how could you pull a dog's tail? You wicked pro-abortionist. How could you pull a dog's tail? It's so cruel to pull a dog's tail. How dare you, Joe Biden? Listen to what Monica Showalter says. Far from being a tale of injuring himself, touch football maybe, and sustaining hairline fractures to his foot while playing with his dog, Biden now says he injured himself stepping out of his shower, tripping over a rug, chasing his dog, and yanking the creature's tail. Ah, so the story's changed now, huh? Yanking an animal's tail? Like, why? Why would you ever yank an animal's tail? Now, here's a quote of Joe Biden from the New York Post. These are Biden's own words. What happened was I got out of the shower. Uh-oh, hold on. Let me start over. I got to do a narration, guys. I got to be a storyteller here. It's Friday afternoon, and you guys need some Bobby Hesley storyteller time. So let me start that over. And I'm one of those guys where it's like when I read to little kids, you know how when you read kids, you actually do the voices of the characters. Like if you're reading Charlotte's Web to the kids, you got to do the voice of the pig, or you got to do the voice of the spider. You got to be like, I want to help you eat your pie. And then the bird said to the little child, I'm going to help you eat your pie. So let me be a storyteller, and let me do Joe Biden's voice. What happened was I got out of the shower, man. Because, he's wearing a stupid mask, right? So you got to talk through the mask. I got a dog, and anybody who's been around my house knows little pup dropped the ball in front of me. Come on, man. The dog dropped with some fucking thunking from him. And for me to grab the ball, Biden told CNN, journalist Jake Tapper. Oh, well, actually, the narrator's not wearing a mask, so let me use my normal voice. Biden told CNN journalist Jake Tapper in his first post-election joint interview with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Okay, here's Biden's voice again. And I'm walking through this little alleyway to get to the bedroom, bedroom, man. Come on, man, to get to the bedroom. And I grabbed the ball like this, and he ran, man. Come on, man. The dog ran, man. And I'm joking, running after him and grab his tail, man. I grabbed the tail, man, because, I'm Joe Biden. I like to chase tail. Us Biden boys, we like chasing tail. Especially tail that's on the Epstein flight log, if you get my drift. And what happened was he slid the dog on a throw rug, man. Come on, man. And I tripped on the rug and slid on. That's what happened. Oh, man, not a very exciting story. Come on, man. There's your vice president-elect, Democrats. The article concludes, Biden owns 2 German shepherds, the younger Major and the older Champ, who lived with Biden in Washington during his vice presidency. Come on, man. I thought you were better than this, Joe Biden. I thought you're a Democrat, man. I thought you're supposed to worship animals. I thought you're not supposed to be cruel to animals. Why would you pull a dog's tail? Huh? Why, oh, why would you pull a dog's tail, Joe Biden? That is just very, very much out of character for someone of your stature. It really is. Guys, let me show the hypocrisy of this. Let me show you the seriousness of this. Because if I had a dog, I'm no Democrat, but if I had a dog, I wouldn't pull his tail. That's like, we're talking childhood cruelty. You know how you can tell if somebody's going to grow up and be like an evil person? These kids that treat animals like really cruelly. Like these child cruel animals. Like they'll burn the tails of cats and they'll, pull dogs' tails. That's how you know if a kid has an appetite for animal cruelty. And I'm not talking about just experimenting and, hey, you want to see what happens if I stick up a cat's butt? You want to see what noise it's going to make if I stick this twig up a cat's butt? I'm not talking about that kind of child. That's just kids being kids. Okay, I'm sure we've all done stuff like that. I'm talking about the sick kids. I'm talking about the pet cemetery types. The sick kids that are like, hey, Johnny, you want to try out my dad's new gun? You want to do some target practice on all those little birds over there? Huh? That's how you know somebody's going to grow up to be like a psychopath, probably. They actually say that's one of the signs of psychopathy is early childhood penchant for animal cruelty. So if you know any kids who like to torture animals, you got a future psychopath on your hands, possibly. You better get that kid some therapy. But guys, I want to show you something. I want to expose the double standard of liberalism. So allow me to share my screen for a second. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I want you guys to see the fullness of it. And I pulled up just some random pictures of some animals in utero. Now, what is this, folks? Tell me. Use your eyes and let's slide over to what I'm pointing at. Okay. What is this, guys? You see my mouse here? You see it? What is this? Sound off in the comments, guys. Whoever gets the comment right first, I will post your comment to the world to see. What is this a picture of? This is an animal in the womb. And what animal is this, folks? Please sound off in the comments. Tell me what this thing is. Is it Snuffleupagus? Is that old Snuffy? Ah, there we go. You nailed it, Sammy Bull 7. Hey, Andrea, good job. Cindy Perkins, good job. You nailed it. Right? It's an elephant. You guys are great. You really are. It's an elephant. Are you sure it's an elephant? I want you guys in the comments to tell me. I want you to convince me why this is an elephant. Why is this an elephant? What gives you the gall? What gives you the temerity to tell your man Bobby Hesley that this picture that you're looking at right here is an elephant? Dumbo. Nydia. Is that Dumbo? Why is this an elephant, guys? Huh? I need to be convinced that this is an elephant. You know why I don't believe that this is an elephant? I'm going to tell you why. I don't believe that this is an elephant. Chantel, good guess, Chantel. But that's not why. This is just because it has a trunk doesn't mean it's an elephant. Just because it has ears doesn't mean an elephant. Just because it has a tail doesn't mean that it's an elephant. It doesn't. Elephant all day. I disagree, guys. Your man, Bobby Hesley, disagrees. You know why this is not an elephant? According to Democrat logic. According to Democrat logic. Not common sense, not human sense, not natural law, but according to Democrat logic, this is not an elephant because it's still in the womb. Right? I'm just trying to keep you honest. I'm trying to keep my Democrat listeners and viewers honest. According to your logic with the unborn, right? If it's unborn, if it's in the womb, it's not whatever entity it's supposed to be until it's been delivered outside the womb. So according to Democrats, this is not a picture of an elephant. This is a picture of a fetus, right? It's a Dumbo fetus. That's what it is, right? Because according to Democrats, this is not a baby. According to Democrats, because this is something in the womb, I was about to slip and tell the truth on accident and call it a child in the womb, but I wouldn't dare do that. But because it's still in the womb, it's not a child, right? So if this is not a baby, I want to keep my Democrat liberal viewers honest. All you pro-choice Biden supporters, I want to keep you honest. If this is not a baby, if this thing you're looking at in here is not a baby because it's still in the womb, then guess what? This ain't Dumbo because it's still in the womb. It hasn't been delivered yet. So I should have the right to be able to take a forceps and split open the skull of Dumbo here, right? And abort him. Slice and dice him, maybe sell his parts on the black market like Planned Parenthood likes to do, right? I'm sure there's some African poachers, you know, the types that killed Cecil the lion that all the Democrats were outraged about a few years ago, that Jimmy Kimmel choked up and cried about. So I should be able to sell this thing. I'm not going to call it an elephant because it's still in the womb. I should be able to sell this thing that looks like Dumbo, that looks like an elephant, that has the potential to be an elephant, but for the time being, it's just a clump of cells because it's in the womb, right? I should be able to abort this thing and sell its tusks to African poachers that'll pay me top dollar. right? According to Democrat logic, shouldn't I be able to do that? Let's keep reading. What I just did is known as reductio absurdum. Reductio absurdum, which is arguing absurdity by demonstrating the absurd. I'm using absurdity to point out the absurd. And isn't the left, aren't they always the people who tell us hashtag believe the science? Aren't they always the ones that tell us to believe the science? That us Judeo-Christians are a bunch of unscientific, Bible-believing idiots that think the world was created 150 years ago and that we don't believe the science. Well, I want you Democrats to believe the science too. I want to hold you to the same standards that you hold us pro-lifers to. So if that ain't Dumbo because it's in the womb, if this ain't a baby because it's in the womb, this picture I just showed you, then the other picture I just showed you ain't Dumbo. It ain't an elephant. And it's fair game to do what we want to do with that fetus, which, by the way, do you guys know what the word fetus means? The word fetus is Latin for young one. That's what fetus means in Latin. It means young one in Latin. Young what? Okay, this baby here, if this is a fetus right here, this baby right here, if that's a fetus, technically in Latin, you're calling it a young one. A young what? A young elephant? A young giraffe? A young dolphin? What is it? If it's a young human, then that means it's a member of the human race and that it deserves equal protection under the law, as all human beings deserve. So why is animal cruelty so evil, right? But fetal cruelty is celebrated. Isn't the legal basis of abortion is that the fetus is not human, right? That's what the Blackmun Court determined in 1973 that decided Roe versus Wade. One of the dissenting opinions is that because it's not born yet, because it's still in the womb, it's not human. Therefore, it can be aborted. Well, animals aren't human either. Think about this. If a human fetus, or if a fetus is a non-human entity, and therefore, because it's a non-human entity, it can be aborted, killed, whatever people do, these terrible things that people do to in utero babies. If it does not deserve the protection of the law because it's a non-human entity, because remember, according to their logic and their fake science, it's not human until it's born. And in New York, even after it's born, it ain't human because they have the full birth, born alive, abortion thing going there. But if it's a non-human entity because it's in utero, which means it's in the womb, it's in the uterus, and it doesn't deserve any rights because it's non-human, then why do animals deserve any rights at all? Animals are non-humans. Who would refer to an animal as a human, right? But here's the inconsistency of the liberal logic, is because if you're a human, you don't deserve any protection in the womb. You have limited protection outside of the womb from abortion. And if you live in New York, you have zero protection outside the womb. The fact is, there are more black babies that are aborted in New York than are actually delivered. Think about that. But if you're a liberal Democrat, if it's an animal, it has no protection, or it deserves protection in the womb and outside of the womb. Right? Now, why should we be surprised by that? Well, the fact is, guys, we live in a post-Judeo-Christian culture. The fact is, our culture has become overwhelmingly pagan. And one of the ways you can determine whether or not a culture is pagan is by comparing its treatment of animals to its treatment of humans. And what are some of the hallmarks of paganism? If you look at all the ancient pagan, superstitious, godless civilizations of the past, okay, let's just use human history as an example. When you look at the history of paganism, one of the distinguishing marks of a pagan culture are two things: animal worship, right? Think back to the Egyptians, right? Think back to the ancient races like the Egyptians. They worshipped animals. They had gods that were named after animals. One of their main gods was a cow, which was why it was so egregious when the Hebrews committed idolatry and made a golden calf in the book of Exodus, right? Because they were mimicking the behavior of their pagan counterparts, and they should have known better as the chosen people. But Ancient pagan cultures, all pagan cultures throughout history, were known by two things. Number one was animal worship. You know what the second thing that most pagan cultures were known by that runs hand in hand with animal worship? Human sacrifice. Those are the two distinguishing hallmarks of pagan cultures: animal worship and human sacrifice. And if you want to narrow it down and get even more specific, not only human sacrifice, but even more specifically, child sacrifice. Look at the people who worship the demon god Molech. If you look throughout the Old Testament, what was the main sacrifice that they would make to Molech? Children, babies. Look at the Aztecs. And unfortunately, our American culture, we make lots of human sacrifice, except we're not sacrificing animal babies to the god Molech, to the demon god Molech, or to Baal. We are sacrificing babies on the altar of selfish convenience, on the altar of feminism, on the altar of vanity, women not wanting to ruin their bodies from pregnancies, on the altars of lust, because people who have sex outside of the confines of marriage and the laws of God that he laid down around sex don't want to deal with the consequences of that sex when nature takes its course. So what do? They sacrifice that unborn child on the altar of lust, on the altar of contraception and pornography. In one of my past videos that I did a few weeks ago when I was down in Orlando, study the etymology, study the history of the word Hollywood, guys. The very word Hollywood is satanic in origin. It's from the holy wood. It's known as the holly tree. And there were pagans who used to sacrifice children to the holly tree because they were pantheists. Pantheists are people who deify nature. They talk about the universe. They ascribe the powers of God to the universe, whatever the heck that means. That trees are divine, the clouds are divine, animals are God, rocks are God. Pretty much everything except God is God. They deify nature. It's called pantheism. And these pagans used to believe that trees were divine, specifically the holly tree. And it was called the holly tree because it was a holy tree. Whenever you hear that phrase holly, it implies holiness. Like, what's the root of the term holiday? Holy day, right? Holidays are holy days. It's literally spelled the same way if you just replace the I with the Y. Holy day, holiday. So even when people go out of their length to bury Christmas and be anti-Christian and have a birthday party where everybody except the birthday boy Jesus was invited, and they can't bring themselves to say that horrible word, Merry Christmas, they say Happy Holiday. They're still saying Happy Holy Day. So the holly tree is pagan in origin. Hollywood, Holywood, that's a pagan name. Why? Because it talks about child sacrifice. And G.K. Chesterton, one of the greatest Catholic authors of the 20th century of all time, here's what he said about this. There was a lecture that he gave called On Seriousness, the Uses of Diversity. This was back in 1920. G.K. Chesterton says, there is a healthy and an unhealthy love of animals. And the nearest definition of the difference is that the unhealthy love of animals is serious. I am quite prepared to love a rhinoceros with reasonable precautions. He is, doubtless, a delightful father to the young rhinoceroses. But I will not promise to laugh at a rhinoceros. I will not promise not to laugh at a rhinoceros. I will not worship an animal. That is, I will not take an animal quite seriously, and I know why. Wherever there is animal worship, there is human sacrifice. That is both symbolically and literally a real truth of historical experience. So why is it that some of the most pro-abortion people I know, whether personally or publicly, public figures, why is it that some of the most abortion-hungry, baby-hating people that I know and that you know are also some of the most pro-animal rights people? They pay monthly dues to PETA. They're against wearing fur coats. They're vegans. They wouldn't dare eat an animal. Right? Why is it that those people are some of the most abortion-hungry people you know? Because of the paganism that our culture has fallen into. Animal worship leads to human sacrifice. That's just a fact, guys. You don't even have to be a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim to acknowledge that. If you're just an intellectually honest student of human history, you will come to the conclusion that most pagan cultures sacrifice animals or sacrifice humans. They treat the animals better than they treat the humans. And if you want to measure how just a society is, you don't look at how the society treats the richest, the most powerful, the strongest, right? That's not what you look at. It ain't about how well they treat the strongest, the quickest, the coolest, the sexiest, the most famous, the most talentedest. It's easy to treat them well. The way you judge how just and civilized a society is not how they treat its 1%, not how they treat its most powerful and talented and quickest and fittest and healthiest, but how they treat the weakest members of that society. And not only how they treat the weakest of the members of that society, but also the most vulnerable. And if you want to drill down even deeper, those who are voiceless, those who literally can't even scream, to let out a scream when they're being killed. Take the Christianity out of it. Take the Bible out of it. Let's forget about Jesus for a second. I say that in all reverence. You don't ever want to forget about Jesus. But take Christianity out of it. Let's just look at it from a pure natural law, common sense perspective. Who are the weakest members of society? Those who cannot defend themselves. Those who are in the womb of their mother. They are the most weakest, most vulnerable, most voiceless members of our society, which means they are entitled to the most protection. The weaker a citizen is of a society, the more protection that they are entitled to under the law. Every human being is entitled to equal protection under the law. And the more vulnerable a human being is, if they're poor, if they're disabled, if they're minorities, if there's all these other protected class categories that Democrats like to say, they should have more protection, right? So if you can't defend yourself in your mother's womb, you should have the most protection. But in our sick, twisted, pagan, post-Judeo-Christian culture, the weakest among us have the least amount of protection in society. The least amount of protection. You want proof of this? You think I'm just being some conspiracy theorist? You think I'm just trying to thump you over the head with a Bible? Well, let me just read some of our American laws then. Let's just stick with the law. Let's set the Bible aside. Let's set Christ aside. Let's set all that aside. And let's just look at this from a pure perspective of common sense. Have you guys ever heard of the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act? You ever hear that? The Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. Listen to this recent story. These are federal laws. Check this out, guys. A West Virginia man was convicted in federal court for killing a bald eagle and sentenced to serve 6 days in federal prison, 11 months and 26 days of home confinement, and 5 supervised years of probation. He must also forfeit the rifle used to kill the eagle and pay $3,301 in jail and court fees. And that was for him violating the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. Right? That's what the law does when you kill eagles. Listen to this. In September 2005, a Florida land development company responsible for the destruction of an eagle nest tree on a property where it was building a housing development in Collier County, Florida, pleaded guilty to violating the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. And get this, guys, was fined $356,125. One of the largest penalties ever assessed under this statute. An individual associated with the company also pleaded guilty to violating the BGEPA, which stands for the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, and was sentenced in April 2006 to a $5,000 fine and 3 years on probation. Isn't that crazy? For killing a bird, guys. I'm not advocating killing eagles. Don't get me wrong. I'm an American patriot. I love the bald eagle. That's our nation's symbol, right? The American eagle on the flag. Here's one more story. In January 2005, 2 defendants who cut down a tree. Now listen, they didn't even harm an eagle directly. They just cut down a tree that had an eagle nest in it. 2 defendants who cut down a tree containing a bald eagle nest. Notice, not a bald eagle, but a bald eagle nest in Sarasota County, Florida, pleaded guilty to violating the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. One defendant was ordered to pay a $10,000 fine and contribute $80,000 in restitution. $40,000 to the Albudan Center for Birds of Prey and $40,000 to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation's Florida Bald Eagle Conservation Fund. The other was fined $10,000 and ordered to forfeit the chainsaw used to commit the crime. So get this, guys. And this one that I just read, they didn't even directly harm an eagle. They just cut down a tree that had an eagle's nest in it, that had eagle eggs in it. So here's my question, just to try to make everybody consistent, okay? Everybody that's on the left, everybody who voted for Joe Biden pretty much believes this stuff. Because if you didn't believe this stuff, why would you vote for Joe Biden? Why would you vote for somebody who worships animals and sacrifices human legislatively? Because that's what his record is. You think he's bad? Look at Kamala Harris. She's probably even worse. Obama, Clinton, they're all alike at that. They're all a bunch of pagan, animal worshiping, human sacrificing Democrats. That's who they all are. So the fact is, if you can get an $80,000 fine and your buddy gets a $10,000 fine and they come and confiscate your chainsaw that you used to cut the tree down just for having an eagle's nest in the tree. An eagle nest contains what? Eagle eggs, right? Which is a form of the womb, right? I mean, eagles aren't mammals. Birds are not mammals, but they're still in eggs. We can call them wombs in a sense. They're pods. So if a baby in the womb is not a baby, then why in the hell is an eagle in an egg an eagle? That carries a $90,000 penalty just for cutting down the tree that's in the nest that's in the tree. You can get jail time, you get probation, you get a criminal record for killing a freaking eagle. And not even an eagle, but cutting down a tree that has an eagle's nest in it. That shows the extent to which this culture has abandoned God. And people are surprised that elections get stolen. People are surprised at all these liberal legislative landmarks that are tearing our country down, the America that we love, that is deforming and transforming America into something that is unrecognizable. And people are surprised at that. We've become a pagan culture, guys. We are a post-Christian culture. America was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. Those days have gone. Those days have passed, folks. I'm not saying they can't come back, but all the evil that we see in our country right now, porn, abortion, normalizing pedophilia with Netflix programs like Cuties and drag queen story hours for little kids in school. Are we really surprised that a culture that tolerates all those evil things is also going to steal elections, is not going to have fair elections? This has been coming for the last 100 years, folks. And we just happen to be the unfortunate generation who's alive to witness the crescendo of all this evil that's been building in our country for the last 100 years. So if babies in the womb are not babies because they're in the womb, then eagles that are in eggs should not be eagles. Elephants that are in wombs should not be elephants. Why can't we keep it consistent? That's a rhetorical question for all of my Biden supporting friends who watch this video. Now, moving on to one more topic before I close out today's video. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please like and comment on this video. Please share it. Please subscribe to all my social media channels if you have not done so yet. I make it very easy to do in the description section. Now, I want to get into, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'm actually going to do a whole separate show on this because I'm already pushing 40 minutes now. Sorry about that, guys. I'm back. So I'm going to touch on something that I'm going to do a whole separate show on. But I want to talk about all the evidence that's coming out. I'm going to touch briefly on the Michigan hearing that was yesterday that had Rudy Giuliani and some awesome other people that were there. And also this notion of video surveillance. But I might have to do a whole separate show on that. So let me share my screen here. And I want to play a clip for you guys. I love this woman, man. I got to be honest. Why is it that some of the most strongest voices that are being courageous, the most patriotic, courageous voices have been women lately? Did you guys see that video I did the other day, my last stream, where I showed some of my friends in Michigan, Christina Caramo, Jasmine Early, Artesia Balmer, Dr. Linda Lee Tarver, Angelique Johnson, all these courageous, patriotic women. Men, we got to step up. I need to see more men stealing the show in some of these fraud hearings. That's just a nice little Friday challenge to my male viewers. If you've done so, that's great. But men, we got to quit hiding in the upper room after the resurrection and leaving it all to the women. Why do you think it was a woman who was the very first human being to see the risen Lord on Easter Sunday, Mary Magdalene? Because all the men were in hiding. It's time for us men to come out of hiding. Start a blog, start a YouTube channel, put your name and your face out there like I'm doing, like others are doing. Go to these hearings, testify. Pull your phone out and do some documentaries about voter fraud. Just do what you can to fight for your country, guys. Quit leaving it to the women. So I want you guys to see an example of a bold, patriotic woman that was in Michigan yesterday representing. Check this out, guys. I'm just going to play the clip.
The poll book is completely off. Completely off.
Off by 30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000. That poll book. Why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So my question then is, if the
guess how many? Wait, what about the turnout rate? 120%.
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question.
So the poll book number. Okay, there's two things that could happen here. Either the poll book number, if ballots were counted multiple times, there's two options. Option number one is that the poll book numbers are not going to match.
They don't.
The actual. Not by thousands and thousands of votes. That's not what we see right now.
Take a look again. Take a look again.
Option number two is that they essentially were filling in names of people who didn't vote.
Dead people too?
So is that?
Let's
I guess,
let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then when
I
he's
thought that
done,
was his answer. Okay.
Well, I guess that's my question here is why we're not seeing the poll.
I love this lady.
Votes. That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I'm just saying the numbers are not off by 30,000 votes. So
I know what I
saying
saw.
That they're filling in.
I know what I saw, and I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison. Did you?
I think you're trying to ask you a legitimate question here.
Yeah, let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then don't interrupt him. And then, if you want to respond to it, that's fine. Did you have more, Representative?
Yeah, I guess I just want to keep following back up with the poll book. So are we saying that the poll book is either wildly off, or that they are filling in names?
It's wildly off, and dead people voted, and illegals voted.
Okay.
So that's my answer.
I think.
You hear him take it to this guy? That's courage, guys. I want to see more courage like that among my fellow males. I got to see more courage like that. Now, I was going to do a little bit on the Georgia footage that came out yesterday. I'm not going to have time to do that today because I don't want to run too long on this podcast. But I want to thank everybody for tuning into the Friday edition of the Bobby Hesley Show. Guys, I'm going to give a word of encouragement for those of you who are getting more discouraged the closer we draw to December 14th. We only have 10 days left before the certification of this election, before the winner is certified. And I believe that with all this proof coming out, with all these Senate hearings, there's just way too much proof. There's way too many testimonies. There are hundreds of sworn affidavits. And if you go to my wall right underneath this video, I had a question for reflection last night that I asked everybody. And my question for reflection was this. Sworn affidavits carry the penalty of prison sentence for up to 5 years if they are false and untrue. So if Joe Biden legitimately won this election, like everybody's saying, the media, the Democrats, the Rhino Republicans, if there was no fraud and Joe Biden legitimately won this election, where are the arrests? Where are the prison sentences then? There should be hundreds of people going to prison right now. There should be hundreds of people that are rounded up and arrested for their false affidavits, right? If this was a legitimate election and all these people that were there that saw fraud with their own eyes, backdated ballots, Dominion voting irregularities, Republican poll challengers being kicked out, Republican poll challengers not being allowed to be let in like myself in the TCF Center. If all those sworn affidavits, if Joe Biden legitimately won this election, then all those sworn affidavits are false and criminal. So where are the arrests? Where are the prison sentences? That's a question for reflection that I want all you where's the proof Democrats to be meditating on over the weekend. Because I believe that Joe Biden supporters are the ones who are in denial. With all this evidence, have you watched the Pennsylvania hearing? Have you watched the Arizona Senate hearings? Have you watched the Michigan hearings? Have you watched the Georgia hearings? For all you where's the proof people, we got plenty of proof for you. Are you looking at the proof now? Or are you the ones that are in denial? That's my question. So I hope you got a little bit of education from this podcast about how to gauge whether or not a culture is pagan. And if you want to look at how pagan a culture is, look at how better they treat animals than how they treat human beings. And if you want to be even more specific, look for human sacrifice and look for animal worship, because the two go hand in hand with paganism. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank everybody for coming on this Friday. Please subscribe to all my channels if you haven't done so, and I will see you on the next broadcast.